In the rundown slums of Ebelstein, the locals have a special nickname for this shabby old man, the lying old geezer. Despite walking around looking like he's one bad day away from collapsing, he has the audacity to call himself a great mage. Of course, nobody buys it, considering the guy can barely scrape together enough mana for measly one-star magic tricks to impress the neighborhood brats. To make matters worse, he's got a temper short enough to genuinely lose his mind and scream at little kids just for pulling a prank on him. But right in the middle of his tantrum, he turns around to find a small white-haired boy standing there, silently watching the pathetic display. That white-haired boy with the red eyes ends up learning magic from the town's resident lunatic. He didn't do it for some grand destiny or heroic purpose. It was just a convenient trade. The old man was desperate for a follower to stroke his ego, and the boy was desperate for knowledge. So they spent their nights by the campfire, the geezer rambling on while the kids soaked it all in, sticking together as the freezing winter eventually melted into the of spring. One day, while kneeling in the dirt and drenched in sweat, the boy surrounds himself with a swirling blue aura. The old man watches, his jaw practically hitting the floor, because he realizes the impossible has happened. This random slum kid has actually grasped the flow of mana. As he starts wondering if he accidentally stumbled upon a magical prodigy, the boy's red eyes flare up. He pushes past his limits, thrusting his hand forward to unleash his power. The energy coalesces, swirling violently above him until it takes its final, majestic form, a giant, glowing blue magical shovel. The magical shovel rockets forward and slams right into a tree, leaving the old man staring in disbelief. He realizes the kid isn't just a slum rat. He's got actual talent. This kicks off a year of the boy acting as the old man's personal errand boy, but the trade-off is worth it because he officially claws his way up to becoming a one-star mage. Cut to a gloomy night by their tent, where the old man is deep in his cups. Between loud hiccups, he starts rambling about how unfair the world is, mentioning that noble brats past the northern wall are already reaching three-star magic before they even hit puberty. He tells the kid that for a lowborn like him, reaching that level would take a lifetime of grinding, and even then, he'd barely scratch the surface. He warns him not to get a big head, predicting he'll hit a wall and collapse the second he tries for 2 stars. The old guy is obsessed with bloodlines, screaming that magic is purely genetic and struggling is pointless. He basically spends the entire night hammering into the kid's skull that nobles and commoners exist in different universes. It's pretty obvious he's just projecting his own failures onto the boy. As the geezer passes out, leaving the kid to stare into the fire, the night drags on forever. But things take a dark turn the very next day when the boy comes back to their spot in the pouring rain. The old man is lying face down in the mud, stone cold dead. His body is a wreck, covered in bruises, like he'd been used as a punching bag. At first, the kid just assumes the geezer's temper finally wrote a check his body couldn't cash, and that he got his ass kicked in some random brawl. But as he drags the corpse into the grave and buries him under the pouring rain, the tragic truth eventually comes out. The old man wasn't fighting a drunk. He was beaten to death by the guards because he was caught sneaking into a warehouse, trying to steal a 2-star spellbook. No one could understand why a man with zero ambition would throw his life away for a spellbook. But while standing in the rain, a blue holographic screen suddenly glitches into existence behind the boy. The old geezer spent his whole life preaching that magic was all about noble bloodlines, but that logic goes right out the window here. Why? Because this kid doesn't just lack noble blood, he's not even from this world. As the system prompts him to permanently choose his primary school of magic with a strict no-takebacks policy, the timeline abruptly fast-forwards 4 years later. Enter Katja Flameheart, the former mistress of a fallen noble house and a legit 3-star mage. She was hot property for mercenary groups, but settled in Ebelstein to take contracts with the Belden Mercenary Corps. That's where she crossed paths with the boy, who had joined the Corps young, while still scraping by with his 1-star magic. Katja took him under her wing, becoming a far better teacher than the crazy old man ever was. Cutting to a tavern called Belden's Tear, she sits him down for a serious talk and finally drops his name, Derek. She tells him straight up that it's natural for mages to crave power, and unlike the average grunt, he actually has the raw talent to climb higher. Katja warns him that being too greedy is a great way to stall his progress, and Derek agrees to keep his ambition in check. She guides him through a meditation exercise, telling him to sense his mana's origin and visualize dragging his imagination into reality. As blue energy swirls around him, Katia observes with a keen eye, realizing the kid is actually sitting on a gold mine of innate mana. Plus, all that time fighting for his life in the field has given him rock-solid control. But then Derek's eyes glow, a terrifying shade of violet, and the mana pressure spikes so hard it actually wipes the calm expression right off Katia's face. Before she can figure out if he's a genius or a ticking time bomb, a massive explosion rocks the entire building, nearly shaking the shingles off the tavern roof. The drunks downstairs immediately lose their minds, screaming about an enemy attack and scrambling to check outside. Derek snaps out of his trance, panting like he just ran a marathon. But Katia doesn't give him a second to breathe. She immediately clamps her hand down on his wrist to lock him in place. Katia orders him to keep his mouth shut and immediately drags him out of the room, hauling him right past the confused guards who are running around in circles trying to locate the source of the explosion. Once they've slipped away to a quiet alley, she turns around with a look of pure dread to drop a hard truth. She reminds Derek that nobles are paranoid about their status, and to them, magic isn't just a skill, it's the ultimate privilege they hoard to keep everyone else beneath them. She explains that while innate power is celebrated as a blessing, that rule only applies if you have a fancy last name. For a commoner, reaching 3 stars usually takes an entire lifetime of grueling dedication, yet here Derek is, breaking the mold before he can even grow a beard. It turns out that massive explosion wasn't a physical bomb. It was a 2-star delusion spell called auditory hallucination. Just like that, at the ripe old age of 14, Derek bypasses the insurmountable wall the old geezer ranted about and officially becomes a 2-star mage. The system immediately confirms the upgrade, permanently unlocking for the next year. Katia sticks around, passing down various combat spells and teaching him the intricate nonsense of high society until the day finally comes for her to pack her bags and move on. Word comes down that Katia scored a massive promotion. She's been appointed as a private tutor for the county of Elvester. And this isn't some low-tier noble family. House Elvester is so formidable that even the Grand Duke in the capital has to tiptoe around them. Naturally, it was an offer she couldn't refuse, because landing a teaching gig with a family that powerful is basically a golden ticket. She waves goodbye, but not before leaving Derek with one final gift, a 2-star spell book to add to his growing collection. The system updates his stats, showing off a laundry list of acquired spells like Magic Arrow, Fireball, and Clairvoyance, as he closes the book and lets another year slip by. At just 16 years old, Derek has already managed to self-study and master 2 additional 2-star spells, and he makes it clear that he has absolutely no intention of stopping there. Back at Belden's Tier, the tavern keeper is practically vibrating with excitement because they finally landed a request that isn't bottom-of-the-barrel garbage. He leans over the counter and drops the bomb on Derek. This isn't just any job. It's a direct request from the Grand Duchy House Duplain. The guy looks at Derek with wild eyes, asking if he even comprehends the insane magnitude of the opportunity that just landed in their lap. Derek immediately questions why a massive powerhouse like Duplain would hire a bottom-tier crew like them, but the tavern keeper calls him an idiot for looking a gift horse in the mouth. He starts raving about how Duplain spends gold like water, shaking Derek by the collar and insisting that this job is their golden ticket to building high-level connections. When Derek finally gets him to calm down and explain the mission, it sounds suspiciously simple, just subduing a few monsters on the outskirts of the territory. The owner acts like it's an easy payday, claiming nobles wouldn't lie, but Derek immediately smells a rat. It makes 0 sense for a Grand Duchy to hire cheap mercenaries for a standard cleanup, unless there's a nasty catch. He flatly refuses, telling the guy to go find another sucker, and walks straight out the door, while the panic-stricken owner screams for him to wait. Derek tries to walk out, reminding the guy he has a strict policy against taking shady jobs, but the tavern keeper is desperate enough to scream his lungs out. He admits he wouldn't be begging if he had a choice, but the client specifically demanded a mage, and since magic users are practically unicorns in the mercenary world, Derek is literally the only option he has. Derek pauses, rightly pointing out that needing a mage for a simple monster hunt is suspicious as hell, and turns to leave again to avoid the headache. But just as he reaches for the door, the keeper plays his trump card, 1 gold coin. He shouts that it's merely the advance payment, and just like that, Derek's skepticism melts away as he finds himself staring down at the shiny gold coin sitting in his palm. Money talks, so Derek finds himself standing in front of the clients, A stiff-looking old man with a monocle, a middle-aged woman, and a mysterious figure hiding under a blue hood. The tavern keeper pushes Derek forward like a proud dad, but the monocle guy immediately shuts it down with a hard, absolutely not. He is genuinely offended, asking why they're trying to pawn off a job to a kid who hasn't even had his coming-of-age ceremony yet. He scoffs at the keeper, saying he expected better from a Dawn War veteran, and turns to leave, completely ignoring the keeper's desperate pleas that Derek is the real deal. But just as the group turns to walk away, the hooded figure reaches out and grabs the old man's arm, whispering something that stops him in his tracks. Whatever the hooded figure whispers is enough to stop the monocle guy dead in his tracks. He turns back, his entire demeanor shifting, and with a sigh of defeat, he looks Derek in the eyes and finally agrees to talk. Next thing you know, Derek is out in the Duplain territory, putting his skills to the test. A goblin comes charging, only to get blasted back by a bolt of blue magic. But Derek isn't a one-trick pony. Before the creature can even hit the ground, his eyes flash a menacing red, and he closes the distance in an instant, his sword slicing cleanly through the monster's neck. Without missing a beat, Derek flicks the blood from his blade as another goblin lets out a guttural roar, lunging at him from behind. He doesn't even flinch. With fluid motion, he sidesteps the clumsy attack, his own sword flashing in a deadly arc that slices straight through the monster's arm. Before the goblin can even register the pain, Derek pivots, his eyes glowing with cold focus as he delivers a final, decisive slash that sends the monster's head flying. Derek unleashes a final, devastating electric shock, frying the last of the goblins and leaving the field littered with corpses. He casually turns to the clients and reports that the job is done. The monocle guy looks a bit stunned, but the hooded figure is visibly impressed, remarking on how quickly he cleared out the entire horde. Later that night, back at Belden's Tier, Derek's triumphant return is cut short by a furious blonde woman who storms up to his table. Clenching her fists, she glares at him with pure rage and sneers. "So you became a noble's dog, Derek?" The tavern keeper rushes over, trying to pull the blonde woman Pelling off the table. He yells at her to calm down, but she fires back, screaming that commoners should never sell their souls to the nobles. The keeper, with a sly look, asks if she even knows how much the job paid. Pelling scoffs, demanding to know what sum could possibly be worth Derek's pride. But her jaw hits the floor when the keeper corrects her guess of 1 silver and smugly says the advance was 1 gold. Suddenly, all of Pelling's righteous fury vanishes, replaced by stars in her eyes as she practically drools over the insane amount of cash. She immediately flips her tune, begging to be allowed to go crawl between the noble's legs too, leaving the keeper to scream that groveling isn't actually part of the job description. Pelling, now passed out from her excitement, asks how the job went. Derek brushes it off as a simple goblin hunt, but the keeper presses, admitting the client seemed like trash, but definitely looked rich. Derek's face darkens as he reveals the truth. All 3 of them were lying through their teeth. He explains that the dispatch officer claimed to be looking for youth, stamina, and social skills, yet the old man clearly lacked all 3. The woman who called herself a scullery maid had hands that were suspiciously clean for someone who supposedly did rough work. And as for the trainee inspector, Derek trails off as his eyes glow ominously. The tavern keeper Jaden cuts him off, reminding him that mercenaries don't get paid to ask questions. They do the job, collect the cash, and move on. Realizing Jaden has a point, Derek reluctantly agrees. In this dog-eat-dog world, survival is the only thing that matters. The next day, Derek stands in the middle of a goblin graveyard and reports that the job is done, ensuring them the area will be clear for a while. The old man offers a stiff great work, before Jaden immediately cuts to the chase, eagerly asking about the rest of the payment. The old man hands over 2 gold coins, and Jaden immediately starts celebrating. But Derek, still suspicious, cuts him short. After clearing his throat, the old man praises Derek's skills and offers him a new, more lucrative job. Jaden is so confused he actually has to ask for clarification. But the hooded figure reveals the insane offer. 15 gold coins. Jaden's brain short-circuits at the number, but the old man directs the question to Derek, who, with an intense glare, gives a single, firm yes. And just like that, Derek and Jaden find themselves rolling up to the massive, opulent residence of the Grand Duchy of Duplain. Derek is genuinely impressed by the sheer scale of the estate. Before they head inside, the old man decides it's time to drop the charade. Jaden tries to play it cool, but the man introduces himself as Delon, the Grand Steward to the Grand Duke himself. He offers a stiff apology for the deception, explaining it was a necessary precaution for his line of work. Jaden is left stuttering and sweating bullets as the woman introduces herself as Katerina, the Grand Duke's headmaid. Jaden, clearly out of his depth, scrambles to give a formal greeting. Derek connects the dots. The dispatch officer was actually the Grand Steward, and the scullery maid was the headmaid. He had suspected their lies, but their actual ranks are far higher than he ever imagined. As he processes this, his gaze shifts to the hooded figure, and Jaden asks the question on both their minds, just who is this person? With a dramatic flare, the figure slowly reaches up and pulls down their hood. The hood comes down, revealing a young woman with long dark hair and striking blue eyes. She introduces herself as Iceline Eleanor Duplain, the eldest daughter of the Grand Duchy. Then she drops the real bombshell. The monster hunt was just a test. The real job she wants to hire him for is to become the personal magic tutor for her younger sister Della. The revelation hits Derek like a ton of bricks, leaving him completely speechless as he tries to process the insane idea of a slum mercenary becoming a magic tutor for a noble lady. Sometime later in the estate, the doors are being swung open, and a man's yelling for his father, who is the Grand Duke, and someone else named Valerian to take a look at this. His father asks what he thinks he's doing here, and we learn that his name is Reg, and his father tells him that he should conduct himself with dignity. Reg says that the one who needs to act with dignity is not him, but Della, as now she's gone too far. And now she's even laying hands on the people he hired. Valerian tells him to lower his voice as they are currently in the middle of a conversation. Reg says that more than 10 servants quit just last month, and not to mention she smashes objects whenever she feels like it, and he wants to know how long he's going to keep turning a blind eye to her acting like a thug. Valerian yells out at Reg, telling him that this is enough and to leave. Reg says that even if Della is a good-for-nothing, they still have Ashlyn, and it's time that they let Della go. His father says that's not for him to decide. Reg says he had the Grand Steward look into a monastery. They say the facilities are good, and plenty of children of nobles come and go as well. Instead of living while being treated like a burden, it would be better to have her devote herself to God's will. His father starts to grab onto his head and slams him straight down into the desk, saying that he believes he already told him it's not his decision to make. Reg says that he knows, but when the time comes, he has to make a decision. His father glares down at him, and a little later again we see Derek walking through with Ashline. She asks him if he's heard anything about her younger sister Della. He says that he's seen her in the family registry. That's about it. Ashline says that makes sense. She's probably not well known to the public. And as the doors open, we see Reg and Valerian walking down the hallway. Valerian says that it's been a while, asking how her experience in Ebelstein was. She says thanks to Valerian's care, she has been living comfortably. Valerian says that as she can see, Reg's a bit hurt, so they should catch up later. Derek stares at the two of them, trying to piece together the situation, and glances off to a side, spotting the maid crying. And he starts to think and come up with at least some ideas of what has happened. They head into her father's office and take a seat, and he says that he's relieved to hear she was doing well in Ebelstein. She says it's all thanks to him, and that this is the magic tutor she brought from Ebelstein, and he's the one going to be in charge of Della. He stares at Derek for a second, then says that he sees. Ashline says that they're busy, so they'll take their leave, but he tells Derek to stay behind. Derek wonders what for, and after Ashlyn leaves, he gets back to work, saying that he's quite young and asks to double-check that he's 16. Derek says that he is, and then he asks Derek if he can handle magic. Derek says he can use a bit of one-star magic, and it makes him take off his glasses as he laughs. Saying that he has no reason to lie, humility doesn't always come off as a sign of virtue. Derek looks over at him, saying that he knew that the Grand Duke Duplain was a 5-star mage, but now he knows that humility probably isn't going to work here. He says he's sorry if he came off as disrespectful, and the Duke says that it's fine. He knows why he carries himself that way, since being too talented can end up eating away at him. Judging by his age and attire, he doesn't look like someone suited to be a magic tutor. Derek tells him that he's a mercenary. The Duke says that since Ashline chose him, he won't pry any further, and he'll grant him entry to the annex of the residence where Della lives. He can have a maid guide him so he can go ahead and go. Derek, though, tells the Duke a question. The Duke tells him to speak his mind, and Derek says that he's a mercenary, and if he takes a commission, this is his duty to see it through so that Della can learn magic and enter high society as a proper noble, which is what Ashline commissioned him for. The Duke asks why he's spelling out the obvious, and Derek says it's because he has an earnest request to make of him. The Duke wonders what it is. Elsewhere, we see a plate being thrown across the room as it shatters. The maid apologizes, saying that she's so sorry, and Della says that given her status, apologizing won't change anything. She needs to get out of her sight, and if she shows herself to her one more time, she'll throw the plate at her face instead. Meanwhile, Jaden's having tea with Ashlyn, asking why she picked Derek of all people as magic tutor, should have lined up in front of her to do this at Duplain. Besides, a commoner will have difficulty working as a noble's magic tutor. Ashline says that she has tried almost every famous magic master on the continent, but they all gave up, so she opted for those who can use magic, but are under desperate circumstances. Although Derek has the background of a mercenary, he seemed to know a bit about how nobles conduct themselves in their culture. Jaden says that his master was a fallen noble who used to be quite successful, and Derek must have learned all sorts of things from him. Ashline says that makes a lot of sense, as he was refined and kind despite being a mercenary, and she thought that if it were him, he might be able to gently rein Della in and lead her. Jaden says that she needs to learn how to see through people better, as Derek is a mage, grew up on the streets, and he worked as a mercenary before he even came of age. And someone from the streets can't survive just from refinement and kindness. She wonders what exactly that means. We see Duplain guiding him to Della's room. As he stands before the door, he raises his hand and starts knocking. There's no response, so he grabs the door handle and enters, telling Della who he is asking for a moment of her time. She tells him to come closer, and when he does, she smiles before splashing his face with some nasty-ass water and says that this is horrible, and she thought some sewer rat had come in, and he must be the mercenary the Grand Steward mentioned. Or maybe not, since he looks just like a rat. She pulls out a chair and stands atop it before pouring more nasty water on him, asking if this brings back memories of his hometown. She tells him being drenched in water suits him, but he doesn't reply. She continues, saying that she ran out of water and that this is disappointing. He looks up at her, and she starts to get annoyed before kicking him onto the floor, asking how dare he look down on her. She stares down at him before she takes off her shoes, saying that he fucking reeks, and she throws it at him, then sits at the chair, telling him to know his place, and raises her foot to his face, saying that they must have not taught common sense where he lives. Back in her father's office, we see the Duke staring out the window, recalling the conversation he had with Derek. He says the fact that he's here means that Della's problem can't be easily resolved. He wants to ask him, since it is his daughter, how much authority he's willing to grant him when it comes to teaching her. The flashback ends with her getting hit straight in the face, and she falls to the floor in disbelief. She looks up at him horrified and touches her cheek, wondering if this is reality, and Derek tells her to get up. We get a flashback to 3 years ago when he was still with Katya. He's cleaning his blades, saying that if she had to teach a stubborn student who didn't appreciate kindness, he wants to know what she would do. She says that she supposes she'd try to understand them, embrace them, and take them in. He says that's too idealistic, then asks what about a student she can't do that with. She says the essence of teaching is to lead a student in a better direction. If you can't communicate through understanding and acceptance, then you'll have to find a different starting point. He asks her what that means, and she says by carving fear into them. Back to the present, while she's still in shock, Derek tells her that she needs to treat others with consideration and respect, and he won't say it again, and he doesn't want to repeat things, telling her to get up. When she does, she slaps him across the face, asking how dare he lay a hand on her, and he whacks her one more time. He says he won't make her say things twice either. When she deals with others, she will do so with consideration and respect. She starts to laugh, then yells for the Grand Steward, saying that this lowborn dared to put his hands on her. Delon charges into the room, asking if she's all right. Delon asks what he thinks he's doing, and says that if the Duke hears about this, it won't end with just a simple scolding. Derek reaches into his belt and pulls out a note saying that he has been granted full authority over all of Miss Delaw's education, and he has been permitted to use any method he chooses. Delon starts to read it over, and Delaw can tell that this is the real deal. Later that night, Reg is trying to calm Valerian down, begging, But Valerian bursts into Derek's room asking if he's the mercenary he's been hearing about. Derek stares at him while reading a book. Valerian asks how dare he hit Dela, and Reg tells him to put his hand down. Derek says that it's something the Duke himself permitted. Reg adds that he's a guest Ashline brought, and if he acts like this, he needs to think about what that will do to Ashline's position. Also, his father allowed it. Valerian says that Derek needs to go with him, and Reg should go attend to his own matters and forget about this. Reg tells Derek that he heard about what happened, and Della does need a beating before she comes to her senses, and not to worry as Valerian won't go too far. Derek nods. As he watches them leave, he says he doesn't know why Valerian is protecting that hopeless one. When he opens the door to a room, we see some dolls. Valerian tells him to go ahead and go in, and explains that this is the room Della used to stay in the main house, and it's been like this ever since she left. Derek looks over, spotting that she is a painter. Valerian says that Della used to love drawing. Every time she asked him to look at her drawings, her face would turn red, and it was super adorable, but she never finished one. Most of the time, she'd leave a blank space and only draw the part she liked. He apologizes for earlier, as he got too emotional. Derek tells him not to worry about it, but wonders why he brought him here. Valerian says that he just wanted to show him that Della wasn't a child who deserved to be despised or beaten. But at some point, she started obsessing excessively over her bloodline. And in the end, she was driven out of the main house and locked away in the annex. He can't even guess what turned her into that, and they have to stop her from being sent to the monastery. If she learns even a single one-star magic spell, he'll be able to persuade the Duke somehow, and he's begging that he please save Della. Derek takes one of the books and tells him to wait, as he can tell she didn't give up on magic. And judging by all the notes in the margins of these books, it seems to be theory from the School of Regulations, asking if that's right. Valerian says that's right, because nobles learn from the School of Regulations. Derek takes one more glance at the portraits and closes the book, saying that he'll give it a try. That night, while Della is sleeping, he dumps water on her face, causing her to scream. He asks if she's really trying to sleep right now. She asks if he's out of his mind. He grabs her, telling her that she needs to follow him right now. She starts screaming, telling him to let go of her. As he drags her through the hallways, she tells him that it hurts, and she doesn't want to go with him, and calls him a lowborn once more. They head out of the estate into the woods, and he throws her onto the floor. She asks what he thinks doing this would change, as he doesn't even have the right to teach her. He says that she doesn't even listen, but he wants to tell her an interesting fact. He doesn't have any intention of teaching her magic. He just likes beating up stuck-up nobles. She looks horrified, asking what he just said. He says surely she agrees that there's no reason for someone from the bottom to like nobles. This tutor nonsense is just an excuse. She asks what he's talking about, and he says that it's an excuse for him to beat up arrogant, high and mighty nobles just like herself. He then draws his blade, asking if she knows how beautiful the screams of those noble people are. She asks if he thinks he'll be safe after doing something like this. And he says, of course, she's going to be shoved into a monastery soon anyways. So who would believe anything she says? And if something really big happens, he can apologize with his life, as that's about how much a commoner's life is worth anyways. Or he could just run away, as they would forget about him soon enough. He'd be doing Deplane a favor by getting rid of its headache after all. She gets scared, thinking she's going to die, and runs into the woods saying that she can't get caught, so she needs to go hide. She says she can't go across the grassland towards the residence, since he will catch up to her immediately. As she gets caught up by some trees, she keeps running, saying that she needs to shake him off in the forest, and she knows it well, so she can run back to the residence from here. Then he will be the one who dies instead. She sees a bright light and turns, wondering what it is, only to see a fireball being formed. As Derek continues casting it, she's shocked, saying that it's a 2-star magic, so how can a lowborn use that? As Derek walks forward, he starts to laugh before he shoots it straight towards her. It flies directly at her head, and she drops to her knees screaming, but we see it would have missed anyways, and it explodes right in front of her. She starts to piss herself, and Derek says that it looks like he missed. Sometime later, we see her still running away, and she's panting heavily. Her foot gets caught on a tree branch as she falls face first into the floor eating shit. As she starts to sit up, a mana arrow flies in, and she dodges as it passed her head into the floor. She looks down horrified, and he says that she's pretty quick. It's hard to believe that speed belongs to someone who's been shut inside the annex all day. She continues running, and we see him thinking about something. But so is Della, and she wonders how long she needs to keep running, and if she can even get away. because at this rate, he'll definitely catch her. She turns wondering what he's doing as he's putting his hand on the ground using some kind of magic. He looks up saying that this is the same forest he saw in the paintings. It must be where she's been running around since she was little. Without even realizing it, she felt the mana in the vast wilds and transferred that feeling onto the canvas. And he starts to say what it is, but she cuts him off by screaming, leaping at him with a rock in her hands. He draws his blade and cuts the rock in half, and she falls back onto the floor looking horrified. He says he'll admit that her spirit is admirable. Knowing it would be hard to shake pursuit, she showed her strength back instead. That couldn't have been an easy decision to make. She sits there looking at the floor thinking about what to do, and he says that he can tell that she has no strength to run anymore. He asks if she has any last words, and she laughs, saying that she refuses to apologize. Unlike Lowborn, she doesn't grovel, and he can just kill her. He asks why she's so obsessed with bloodline to begin with, and she says that if not for that, what would she have left? If you take away the great bloodline from her, she is nothing. It's always just magic this, magic that. She hits the floor out of frustration and starts crying, asking if he thinks that she really never tried. He doesn't say a word, and she continues saying that no matter how hard she tries, it just doesn't work. Magic or painting, if she gets weeded out of everything, she's going to fall behind, and she has nothing left at this point but her bloodline. And if even that goes, what will she be after that? He continues being silent and infuses his sword with mana, and she realizes that this is her fate as he raises the sword into the air, saying he's heard enough, telling her goodbye. She continues crying while staring at him, and then we hear the sword come into contact with something as it cuts ice apart. The eyes that she closed out of fear slowly open, and she sees his blade trapped in ice, and looks up confused because there's now an ice wall forming around her. She looks down at her hands, asking if this is really magic, and he instantly sheathes his blade, saying that was good work, and he's sorry for his rudeness. He realizes that he wasn't actually trying to kill her, and he says that it may not be something that she could truly call magic, as it's just a manifestation of mana, but she still did it. The realization that she's not a failure sets in, and she starts bawling her eyes out, screaming as loud as she can, so loud that it echoes throughout the forest. A little later, he starts to tend to her wounds, telling her that this means she is from the School of the Wild. She asks what that means, and he says that he's heard most nobles learn the School of Regulations, and at its core, every school of magic is essentially the same, but it differs enormously in the process of understanding and mastering it. She's from the School of the Wild, so trying to learn magic through the theory from the School of Regulations was bound to cause problems, and at that point it was her trying to wear clothes that don't fit. She asks how he would even know that she's from the School of the Wilds, and he says that he saw the drawings she made, and she could feel the mana drifting, and she put it onto the canvas. Mages are usually born with the temperament of the School of the Wild, since they interact with the mana and nature when they're young. She looks down at her bandages, and he asks if she's able to walk now. She says that it's not bad, and he tells her that's good. She succeeded in manifesting mana, but there's still a long way to go. Starting tomorrow, he's going to teach her how to manifest it naturally. She thanks him, but he doesn't say anything, and instead tells her it's time to go. He then asks about the sunset painting and if that was her work. She says she doesn't know, since it's been so long since she put the brush down, and he says it was beautifully done. She says that that's actually her masterpiece, and he's the first person who realized it was finished. The next morning, we see her waking up in bed. As mana starts to form around her hand, she can sense it, but she can't actually manifest it, saying that it's hard. Outside of her room, a maid is carrying water, and Della exits, scaring the shit out of her, to the point that she spills it all over her clothes. She realizes that she might get fired today, and starts apologizing profusely. Della glares at her as the woman starts to grovel. She says that she knows this is a sin worthy of death, but begs for forgiveness. Della just tells her to watch where she's going, and the maid can't believe she's not being hit. The other maid asks if she's okay, and she says yes. She only told her to be careful. They ask what happened when she left last night. In Derek's room, he's sound asleep until she starts banging on the door, screaming out for him. He opens it, wondering what she wants. And even Delon says that she needs to mind her manners, as this is inappropriate. Dela says she needs to know how to handle the mana she manifested, as she tried on her own, but it's not working. Delon is surprised she manifested mana, and Della says that he told her he'd teach her today, so he needs to hurry up and do it. He closes the door, saying that she can do it this afternoon. Delon wipes away tears as Della gets pissed and starts beating on the door, telling him to come out and teach her now. He just falls back asleep as she starts screaming at him. Later in the same day, Rag's walking down the estate halls as the maids are talking about how Della hasn't broken a single plate. The maid from earlier says she spilled water on her, and she didn't even get hit for it. They're talking about how she manifested magic. Rag stops walking, asking what she just said. It takes us to the Duke's office, and he asks if she really manifested magic. Valerian says that from what he can tell, the answer is yes. He asks the head butler and the servants repeatedly. The Duke says that's a relief, and Rag says this isn't something they can just jump to conclusions about just because she manifested magic. Valerian says that he should be praising her instead of this. But the Duke can tell that he's right, and Rag says that they can't forget everything she's done up until now. A result as small as this shouldn't be enough to brush aside sending her to the monastery. The Duke doesn't say anything, but continues doing his work. Back to Della, she is sulking in the bed. He asks if she's really sulking right now, and she says she's not. She's just angry. He says even if she acts spiteful like that, it won't change anything. She says that she's not being spiteful, she's just angry. He says even if she keeps pouting, there's nothing they can do. There's an order to everything. She yells, saying that she already told him that she's not pouting, she's just angry. He stares at her, and it scares her to the point that she says that he can just say that she's pouting then. He pulls out a chair and sits down, saying, just because she manifested magic doesn't mean she can go around using it or it'll backfire. He's saying this because he's been through it. This is just as important as learning, and she's rested enough, so now she needs to study. She gets annoyed and walks over, saying of course he would say that. Here comes the stuffy magic teacher shit. He glares at her, asking if he shall teach her in a way that's not stuffy, and she recalls the last little session and gets scared, saying to forget it. He says today they will practice magic manifestation, and once she can freely use it, she will be able to learn one-star magic before long. And the School of the Wild has no rigid system, so it's ideal for self-study. It pursues far more freedom than the School of Regulations. To be honest, she actually suits the School of the Wild well. She asks what he means, and he says that it's exactly what it sounds like. Her free-spirited nature has good compatibility with the school, and on top of that, she was born with the plain blood, so she's overflowing with talent. Her ears start to wiggle a bit, and she blushes, asking if she's really talented. He says yes, and if she can conjure up an ice wall the instant she manifests, then she's definitely overflowing with it. She asks if she's maybe some kind of genius. He says having talent and being a genius are clearly different things. She says they're not. They continue arguing about it. As Reg is outside the window, he looks annoyed. The next day, Della bursts into his room, saying that she can do magic manifestation now, but she can't get the direction right. The next day, she tells him that she tried imbuing it with cold, but something feels off. The day after that, she says she can feel it, but the sensation is weird. The day after that, she asks what he's doing outside, as she told him to stay near the annex, and that her father didn't lend him these spell books so he could slack off. He says that he was lent them exactly for that purpose. She drags him back, saying that she succeeded at letting the magic flow, like he said, so he needs to hurry up and check it. Later, inside of Valerian's room, he is waiting as the door opens. Derek asks if he called for him. Valerian tells him to take a seat, asking how Della has been lately. Derek says she's made quite a bit of progress, but learning one-star magic will likely take a bit more time. Valerian says he sees, and his mother, who went to a social gathering, will probably return sometime next week, and he'll tell him this in advance. She's not someone that he can take lightly, and the people in this estate are fine. But nobles by nature don't like commoners holding key positions, and he should know that too. He says he'll keep that in mind, asking if that's why he was called here. Valerian sits there for a second and tells him that he's the next head of House Duplain. That means that it's a position where one embraces and includes the members of their house, and to do that, they must be sincere with every member. But that's really difficult because a person's heart can be so deep and profound. It would be nice if everybody's thoughts and values were the same, but that's not reality. Derek asks what he's trying to say, and Valerian looks up at his fist and starts crying, saying that Della won't play with him anymore. Derek wonders if this guy's a freak. Valerian continues, saying that he still vividly remembers how she used to welcome him with a smile when they were little, and he wants that angel like Della to come back, and he asks if there's really no way to win her favor again. Derek asks why he's asking him that, and Valerian says it's because he's the only one Della follows around. As she starts screaming for him on cue, Valerian tells him to take a look at this first as he learned how to make dolls from the maids. He asks what he thinks about it, and it looks just like Della, and he wants to give it to her, showing that her big brother loves her. Derek asks if that's actually a voodoo doll, because that shit could kill someone. Valerian starts crying and says that he's useless for this sort of thing. Poor guy. Gives off golden retriever energy. His mother finally arrives a little later, and she tells Derek she's heard a lot about him, and that they found a very capable magic teacher, and it's nice to meet him. She introduces herself as Morella de Belle Duplain, and if it wouldn't be an inconvenience, she'd like to give him a gift from her territory. Derek tells her that he's not affiliated with any house. She asks what that means, and he tells her that he's a commoner, and instantly she looks a little taken aback. We get a flashback to 1 week earlier. Ashline says she's glad they brought him to the estate. As Della's older sister, she'd like to stay by her side longer, but she has to take care of things in Evelstein, so she'll be leaving her to him. He says he understands, and Jaden tells him that she's trusting him with her sister, and his answer was way too lifeless, but also tells him to wrap things up quickly and come back, because if Pauline finds out, she'll make a huge mess again. Ashline as well says she's going to be counting on him, and they part ways. She says she completely forgot to tell him, and Jaden asks about what. She says her mother will be returning next week, and she forgot to give him a heads up. Jaden asks if there's something she needs to warn him about, and she says her mother is definitely a little bit on the angry side. Morella barges into the Duke's office and yells at him, asking how he could be okay with Della's teacher being a commoner. He says that he can hear just fine, so she should lower her voice. She says that's not the problem right now. It's Dela, their beloved youngest daughter. He tells Morella that she knows as well that he doesn't exactly like appointing commoners, but every teacher with a good bloodline threw up their hands and gave up. Morella says even so, how could he take in someone who used to roll around in the mercenary world? The Duke says finding a decent magic teacher isn't that easy, and Derek was recommended by Ashline. Morella says that still, there has to be a standard. They have his younger brother, Flam. She says he was busy last time, but it's different now. Della's manifested magic too. So if he comes and teaches her, but the Duke cuts her off, saying that there is no way that she is trying to pull the person managing the territory and turn him into a private teacher, and that running Ebelstein won't work if they handle it half-assed like this. She then brings up the social circle in Ebelstein, and if he thinks that it can run half-assed too, as it's a war zone there. Socially, a teacher matters more than anything. And since they have a commoner of no family name, Della is going to become a laughingstock when she debuts in high society. Valerian enters the room telling her to calm down for a moment, as surely she didn't come here to fight with father. She says that he should step aside as this isn't something they can just let slide. Raid says, in the end, the question is whether the commoner mage has the qualities to be her teacher or not, asking his mother if he is right. She smiles, excited to see him, and he says that a commoner becoming a noble's magic teacher is not a normal situation. Of course, if that commoner truly has the necessary qualities, then it's not a problem, and that he wants to test the qualities of Derek himself and fight him in a magic spar. The Duke says that's enough, and that he's the real deal as a mage. Raid thinks about it, then asks if he can test Della instead. Valerian wonders what he's cooking up, and Raid says if Derek is such an excellent teacher, then Della, who received his instructions, must have achieved excellent results as well, and that he will personally spar with her and verify the results. The Duke goes to say something, but instead we see Raid walking away, and Valerian yelling at him, asking why he's trying to fight their sister. Raid asks if he truly believes Della has turned over a new leaf, and if he's forgotten what she's done. Valerian says even still she's blood, and they need to hold her close and protect her. Raid laughs, asking what he means by blood, saying that blood is what's been trying to bring their house down, as if everything she hasn't done so far wasn't enough. If she debuts in high society like this, it'll be the end of them. Valerian asks if that's truly how he feels, and Raid says that she was the first to cross the line. The best thing for her is to be shut away in the annex, like she has been. Valerian is obviously against it and sits there frustrated as Raid walks away determined. Outside of Derek's room, a bird's chilling there, peacefully before Della slams the door open screaming at him, definitely scaring the bird away. He asks what she's doing here so early in the morning. She throws a scroll of paper onto his book, that if she loses this magic spare, he's fired. He says that he hurt and that Reg is already a season 1 star mage, so it'll be difficult for her to win. She asks if that's all he has to say, as he's going to get fired. He reminds her he's a mercenary, he just does the job he's hired to do, and he takes the pay that comes with it. He's already been paid more than enough too. She asks if he really means that. A whole week later, it's time for the everybody heads to the training grounds. We see the Duke and Mirella walking there, and Derek greets him. He bows, and the Duke says that Derek doesn't look nervous at all, and wonders if he's confident, and if he is, then he isn't someone they should cut loose yet. This time it's Raig's entrance, as he's wearing a cape. He says this won't be a simple magic spar, and he's going to completely break her today, and that he'll make her regret the past down to her bones. Della also makes her appearance looking like Little Red Riding Hood, and we see right when she asks Derek if he really meant that, and if he doesn't care what happens as long as he gets paid. Derek says that she's probably already noticed that her magic growth has already gotten on track. She can't use one-star magic right away, but it won't take long. And that's because she was born with Duplain blood. She asks why he's saying that all of a sudden, and he says he told her before that the School of the Wind is a school that focuses on self-study rather than passing things down. She gets mad asking why he's saying that kind of shit right now, and he turns. She says that she knows that she's not that great of a student, but still she wants to keep learning magic from him, and she doesn't want anyone else as her teacher as she starts to cry. He turns away from her, saying that he'll tell her this in advance. He doesn't have the etiquette or rules for noble magic spares, as he's never done one, but he can teach her how to win in a fight. But that's if she wants to. She starts to recall her constantly being called a failure, and how everybody used her to mock their family, which is what led to her behavioral issues, but she also doesn't want that anymore, saying that all she wants is to win. Today she didn't come here as Reggie's younger sister, and much less as the youngest of House Duplain. She stood there solely as Derek's student and a mage,